So, in Singapore right now, there's this huge debate happening that gets right to the heart of one of the most personal decisions anyone can make: when or even if to have a child. The government is thinking about making a pretty big change to its egg freezing policy. And yeah, on the surface, it's all about giving women more choice. But if you dig just a little bit deeper, what you find is this really complex story. It's about biological clocks, money pressures, and how even the best intended policies can have some serious unintended consequences. Let's get into it. Everything, and I mean everything, we're about to talk about really starts with this one single number: 0.87. It might not look like much, but trust me, this is the number that is keeping Singapore's policymakers up at night. So what is it? Well, that is Singapore's total fertility rate. It's the average number of babies born per woman. And it's not just low, it is an all-time historic low. Now, for a country like Singapore, this isn't just some abstract statistic you see in a report. This is seen as an existential threat to its entire economic future, its whole social fabric. This demographic crisis, it's the critical backdrop for our whole discussion today. It's exactly why the government is so urgently looking at every possible lever it can pull, including a technology that promises to do what sounds impossible: stop the biological clock. And that brings us right to the proposed fix at the center of this whole debate: changing the official age limit for elective egg freezing. Okay, so here's how things stand for women in Singapore right now. Since 2023, they've had the option to freeze their eggs. But it comes with this really strict looming deadline, their 37th birthday. As you can probably guess, for a lot of women who are trying to build a career or maybe just haven't found the right partner yet, this creates a ton of anxiety. And it's led to a growing number of them appealing this rule, really pushing to get that age limit raised to 40, 42, or maybe even 45. The pressure for change is huge, and it's coming from the very people the policy is supposed to be helping. And this is where you can really see the pressure point. The Ministry of Health is already saying yes to a staggering 70% of appeals from women over 37. Now, that tells us two really important things. First, the demand from women to freeze their eggs after 37 is undeniable. And second, the government is already, on a case-by-case basis, admitting that the current rule might be a little too rigid. So changing the policy seems like the obvious, logical next step, right? But is it the right one? And this right here is where our explainer really kicks off. Because on the surface, giving women more choice, that seems like an undeniable good. Who's going to argue with that? But what if that choice is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the odds? What if it creates a false sense of hope that leads not to more babies, but to more heartache? Let's start peeling back the layers and look at the hidden paradoxes at play here. The first, and maybe the most critical issue, is what the source material calls the false security paradox. This isn't just about changing a rule, it's about what happens when that policy collides head-on with human psychology and, well, the unchangeable facts of biology. Now, what's really fascinating here is the core fear that experts have. If the government, which has a massive influence on social norms in Singapore, raises the age limit to, let's say, 42, women might take that as a green light. They might see it as an official endorsement, a signal from the state that freezing your eggs at that age is a totally sound, reliable plan. But as we're about to see, biology tells a very, very different story. Let's just pause and really look at the hard data, because this is where hope crashes into reality. This table shows you the estimated chance of having a live birth from 20 frozen eggs. Okay, so if you freeze them when you're under 35, your odds are incredible, up to a 90% chance of success. That is a fantastic insurance policy. But just watch what happens as you go down the age groups. At 35 to 37, it's still pretty good, but you can see that dip. Then from 38 to 40, the odds are getting closer to a coin toss. And by the time a woman is 41 or 42, her chances could be as low as 20%. That insurance policy that seemed so solid just a few years earlier has suddenly become a really high-risk gamble. This is the absolute heart of the false security paradox. A higher age limit could accidentally create what experts call a procrastination effect. Just imagine a woman at 36 thinking about freezing her eggs. She sees the new official age limit is 42. She might think to herself, oh, great, I've got plenty of time. I can focus on my career for a few more years. So she waits until she's 40. In those 4 years, without even realizing it, she has traded a very high chance of success for a much, much lower one. It's a classic case of a well-intentioned policy leading to a potentially devastating personal outcome. All right, let's move on to the second paradox, because this all builds on itself. This isn't just about biology. That decision to wait, which might be encouraged by a higher age limit, can also spring a really painful financial trap. Okay, let's talk about money. This is the estimated cost for just one cycle of egg freezing in Singapore. For a lot of people, that is a huge financial commitment. But here's the kicker, and it connects directly to what we just talked about with age. It is rarely just one cycle, especially the longer you wait. Let's imagine two women for a second. Our first woman is 32. She does one cycle, and because her ovarian reserve, that's just the number and quality of her eggs, is still really high, she gets 20 healthy eggs. Her total cost is manageable, and now she has a really high probability of a future live birth. Okay, now let's look at our second woman. She's 41. Her ovarian reserve has naturally declined. So to get those same 20 eggs, she might need 3, maybe even 4 expensive cycles. She ends up paying 3 or 4 times as much, all for just a fraction of the chance of success. It's a brutal financial and emotional equation. And this really brings us to a devastating summary of this economic trap. The very age when many women can finally afford that $10,000 or $15,000 fee is the exact same age when the procedure is at its least effective and requires the most cycles. They are literally forced to pay the most money for the lowest possible chance of success. But the story doesn't even end there. The third paradox is all about what happens years later, when it's time to actually use the eggs, a stage that honestly is often completely overlooked in the public conversation. So here's something that often gets lost in all the talk about egg freezing. The age you freeze your eggs isn't the only age that matters. If a woman freezes her eggs at 42, she might not be ready to use them until she's, say, 45 or even 48. And while the eggs themselves are biologically younger, her body isn't. Carrying a pregnancy in an advanced maternal age brings a whole host of serious health risks for both the mother and the child. Things like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and other complications. It's another critical layer of risk that really needs to be part of the decision from day one. And this is where the marketing can be dangerously misleading. Clinics, they might proudly advertise a thawed egg survival rate of over 90%, which sounds amazing, right? But that number, it's like saying 90% of the seeds you bought survive the winter. It doesn't tell you how many of those seeds will actually grow into a healthy plant. What truly matters is the live birth rate, the actual chance that one of those thawed eggs will become a healthy baby. And for older eggs, that number is dramatically lower, creating this painful gap between what's promised and what's actually possible. So given all these traps, the biological one, the economic one, the clinical one, the source material argues that simply raising the age limit is a really flawed solution. Instead, it proposes a much smarter, more responsible path forward. So what does a smarter policy even look like? Well, the recommendations are all about radical transparency and making sure consent is truly informed. First, mandate counseling from independent professionals, not clinic staff who might have a financial interest in you going ahead. That ensures you get unbiased advice. Second, give every woman who's even considering this an official government booklet, one that lays out the unvarnished facts and success rates by age. No marketing spin, just pure data. And third, update the consent forms so women have to actively acknowledge and sign off on the specific, lower success rates and higher risks that come with their age. It's about making sure the choice isn't just available, but that it's also fully understood. Now, what gets really interesting is when you look at data from other countries that have had egg freezing programs for longer. It turns out that the vast majority of women who freeze their eggs, we're talking up to 90% in some studies, never actually use them. Now, this could be for a lot of reasons. Maybe they conceive naturally, maybe they decide not to have kids after all, but this reality raises a huge question about how public money should be involved. And that brings us to the very difficult question of subsidies. The argument presented in the source is pretty clear. If the success rates for older women are already low, and international data shows that most of the eggs don't even get used, then providing state subsidies for this specific group would be a highly cost and effective policy. It risks spending a whole lot of public money on a procedure that has a very, very small chance of actually resulting in a live birth. This quote from the source material really just brings the whole argument together. Let's let that sink in for a second. To achieve meaningful outcomes, Singapore must address financial inequities and biological realities. In other words, a truly effective policy isn't just about offering a last-minute, low-probability option to older women. It's about tackling the root causes, making it more affordable for younger women to freeze their eggs when it's most effective, and making sure that every single person understands the hard, unchangeable biological facts from the very beginning. And so we end right where we started, with a choice. But the choice isn't just for the women thinking about this, it's for the policymakers. At the very heart of this entire debate is this fundamental tension. Is the goal to simply offer more choices on paper, even if some of those choices are built on a foundation of false hope? Or is the goal to craft policies that lead to what everyone on all sides of this truly wants: more healthy babies and more happy families? The answer is going to shape the future of families in Singapore for years to come.